So this deep dive takes us into some wild territory. We're talking lizard people, but not just any lizard people wearing trainers.
Yeah, it's definitely out there.
I
Right.
mean, who knew reptilian fashion was so, I don't know, modern?
It's easy to kind of dismiss this as just like, another crazy conspiracy theory. And maybe it is, but it's also, I think, a really interesting window into a lot of things happening online. It's like where anthropologists suddenly dropped into this strange new culture.
Okay, so let's back up a bit for those who haven't taken this particular deep dive before. What are we even talking about with these lizard people?
Right. So the basic idea, and it's been around for a while, is that, well, there are these reptilian humanoids, basically,
Mhm.
and they're like disguised as powerful people, like world leaders and celebrities, and they're secretly controlling everything.
So we're talking like a global conspiracy, secret society, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But instead of like, Illuminati robes, they're wearing lizard suits, I guess.
Right, right. Okay, I have to ask, though. Obviously, there's no real evidence for this, right? So what makes these kinds of theories so appealing to some people?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Part of it is how our brains are wired, you know? Like, we're really good at finding patterns, even when they're not actually there. And then we create these narratives to explain those patterns.
So it's like our brains are hardwired for conspiracy theories in a way.
In a way, yeah. And then there's something called confirmation bias, where we tend to look for information that supports what we already believe, even if that belief is, well, a little out there.
And the internet's great for that, right? You find your little corner, everyone agrees with you, and suddenly, bam, lizard people are running the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Online communities can become these echo chambers where these ideas get amplified and reinforced.
Yeah.
And this video, for all its strangeness, it gives us this really fascinating look at how those communities work, how they create their own language, their own inside jokes, that kind of thing.
It's like we're getting a glimpse into a whole different world with its own rules and its own, well, reptilian overlords. And speaking of that whole different world, there was this phrase in the video, plastic scouser. I don't know, it just stuck with me.
Yeah, it's definitely a loaded term.
So what is it, what makes a scouser plastic?
Well, a scouser is basically someone from Liverpool,
Right.
right? But when you add plastic to it, it's like saying they're not the real deal, like they're trying too hard to fit in.
So it's about authenticity then, like you're not a true scouser unless, well, you were born there or something?
Kind of. It's this idea that there's an insider group, and if you don't have the right background or you don't act the right way, then you're just a fake.
It's like that whole gatekeeping thing, I guess, where certain people decide who's in and who's out.
Exactly. And online communities can be really intense about that kind of stuff. Everyone's trying to prove they're the real deal, whether it's about music or movies or, even lizard people.
Right. Like, there's always going to be someone who says you're not a true fan unless you can list every single detail about whatever it is you're into.
Exactly. And it's interesting because this video, with all the conspiracy stuff, it actually highlights this very human need to belong, to be part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, you'd think people worried about lizard overlords wouldn't be so concerned with who's a real scouser and who isn't.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But it shows how these online spaces can be both about connecting with like-minded people and also about these weird power dynamics and anxieties.
It really makes you think, what makes someone authentic anyway? Like, who gets to decide who's in and who's out?
Right. Is it about where you're from, how you act online? I mean, it's a pretty slippery slope.
It is. And it's funny because even with all this talk of lizard people and conspiracies, there's this weird sense of community in that video,
Yeah.
people are leaving comments, making jokes, sharing their own little local legends.
It's true.
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of endearing. For all the weirdness, it shows how these online spaces can offer people a sense of belonging, a place to connect with others who share their interests, even if those interests are a little out there.
Yeah. And maybe that's the bigger takeaway here, right? We can laugh at the lizard people thing, but at its core, this video is really about human connection, about finding your tribe, even if that tribe believes that, well, reptilian overlords are running the world.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that the internet, for all its flaws, can be a powerful tool for bringing people together. We often focus on the negative aspects of online communities, the echo chambers, the misinformation. But this video highlights the other side of that coin, the potential for connection and shared experience.
It's like, yeah, the internet can be a breeding ground for crazy conspiracy theories, but it can also be a place where people find friendship, support, a sense of community.
Exactly. And that's something worth remembering, especially in a world that often feels increasingly divided.
So next time you're tempted to dismiss someone's online persona or the communities they belong to, Remember, there might be more to the story than meets the eye. We all crave connection, a sense of belonging, and sometimes those connections emerge in the most unexpected places, even perhaps among those who believe in lizard people.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've done our deep dive for today.
Yeah, I think we've earned ourselves a nice cup of tea after that one. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
Anytime. Always a pleasure to dive deep with you.
And to all our listeners, thanks for coming along for the journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the weird and wonderful world of the internet. Until then, stay curious.